What's up, guys? Welcome to NDTV Canes. All Canes all day. If you're rocking with you, you know what to do. Hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss out on a video. Today, the Miami Hurricanes escaped with a victory over the Virginia Tech Hokies. I did my raw reaction right after the video. You guys should go check that out. It is on the channel. But today, I got my guy Chris from Canes Legacy. I want to get him on the line to see his point of view, talk my point of view, and we'll discuss things. Chris, how you living? How you feeling?
Feeling good, man. I feel like every week it's a little tough now. When the game is going on, but afterwards, the win is the win.
Give me 1 second here, Chris. Let me make sure. It's sounding a little rough coming from your end. Say something again.
How we doing?
Okay. All right. That sounds great. So yeah, man. It wasn't the most. It wasn't the prettiest, but Miami escapes with the win. Give me one takeaway from this game that you're gonna go with. Your biggest takeaway from Miami's victory over Virginia Tech.
Well, I think honestly it was we've been looking for guys to step up in big spots. And I think that we really finally had some opportunities for the defensive line to step up. Not having Harrison Hunt was tough, but and so the D tackle rotation was a little bit shortened up. But Phillips had a great game. I think Nesta had a great game. Guys really kind of moved into that role of leadership, which we've been hoping for all year. So if that D line starts getting going and can dominate games, I think the back seven, which is kind of been much maligned throughout the season, can definitely take some steps forward.
So my biggest takeaway is watching this game. I mean, we're 8 games in now. We've had a bye week. So this team, this is who we are. Shout out to everybody in the chat right now. We are who we are. My biggest takeaway was similar to what you said, and let me know if I'm wrong, but if we don't get pressure from our front four, then things go bad from us on the back end. Meaning that, if it's not Jalen, Phillips, or Nesta, or Ford or any of those guys creating havoc, and then the quarterback gets to throw the ball, I feel like most of the time they're going to catch it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's the thing. We have, a defensive group that had some struggles, and we run so much generic stuff in the back end because we expect our defensive line to get pressure. And that was always the hallmark of the Manny Diaz defense, getting the front four pressure, whether it was with McIntosh and Norton years ago, or with Joe Willis, or with getting that pressure in the face of the quarterback is vital because he doesn't do much with the back seven. He kind of lets them just go out there and ball. So I think what we did today, kind of showed what it could be if we have it. And then really once you get pressure early, in the downs, and you could force a team like VTech in the throwing situation, it makes things a little bit more easy on your guys because, they can kind of tee off and then really get after the passer. Or as we saw a lot today, you rush to Corey Couch or something off the edge, come from that spot, which he seems so comfortable doing. So, there's some opportunities there, but if you don't get pressure, nothing's going to happen.
Jalen Phillips, 9 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Kind of talk to us about what he means to this defense, because it honestly, I think, and maybe I'm not going to say I'm being a homer on this. I feel like he gets the opposing teams. He probably causes 3 or 4 holds a game that just doesn't get called. Kind of talk about the impact of Jalen Phillips.
Oh, he's great. Early in the season, I kind of had some high praise of him, which I know you remember because you brought it up last week too.
Yeah,
but I think he's a great player. He's the kind of guy that gets the job done with being the other end, being the left end, doing the nitty gritty stuff and holding the edge, and getting tackles for loss, getting held, all that kind of stuff. That's really who he is. But he also has this freaky ability. So if they said to him, look, this game, for example, they twisted him inside so much to mess with the read option. That's why he had 2.5 sacks and tackles for loss and everything, because they let him go back inside and really be a pass rusher as opposed to being the steady presence that he was being. So like once they turn him loose, this kid can do whatever he wants. He's just playing at other spot because Roche is pretty much a pass rusher, right? So like you give this kid free reign to go. I don't know how many defensive ends in the country are better than he is. Like maybe you have equal skill. I'm not saying he's like the best, but I don't know how many guys are like a notch above him in terms of his physical ability.
I just think it's really freaky that this kid came from not playing football a couple years to being the best defensive end in the ACC. I think there's an argument to be made there at least. It's really crazy when you think about him retiring, him giving up football for health reasons and him able to get to Miami, David Feely getting into that program and then now coming in and right off the bat, he's been doing it all year. So we'll see if he can keep this up, but 8 games in, it seems like he's definitely made an impact in pretty much every piece of the game. Another player, but before we talk about an individual player, let me ask this, okay? Shout out to my boy Adrian. He says, keep up the content. I love the channel. Hey, I appreciate you, man. Thank you, guys. We got Chris from CANES Legacy on the line. Let me ask you this, right? Would you rather a defense that shut people down in the first quarter or a defense that shut people down in the fourth quarter? Because it seems like we're sleepwalking throughout the game, and then in the fourth quarter, it's a whole new defense.
Well, I mean, honestly, I'd rather it be in the first quarter because if you have a high-powered offense and you cause some 3 and outs, you can like knock people out pretty early. And honestly, that's what I thought was going to happen today. I know VTech likes to run the ball. I was figuring, you get a couple you get a turnover or 2 or 3 and out early, you can get up 14-0 and start to run away. I knew even when VTech got up, I knew they weren't going to be the team. They weren't going to keep like piling points on, so we had that advantage going for us. But I'd rather do that. But if you can't do that, then the fourth quarter is a pretty good spot to stop them.
All right, and you're looking at these last couple games, Miami defense has been very good in the fourth quarter. We would wonder why it hasn't been good for a full game, and I think that's what the Miami fan base is waiting for. We're waiting for a situation where our offense is good, our defense is good, and I think whenever that day comes, we definitely can get the respect that we deserve. I mean, but honestly, we're not going to get any respect for barely beating these ACC schools. That's why we're an underdog today. Looking defensively, how would you grade Blake Baker right now? I don't know if I've asked you this question, but so far this season, including today, how would you grade Blake Baker as a defensive coordinator?
Well, in general for the season, I'd probably give him a C. Could be better, could be worse, for sure. Like, people are like, oh, he's the worst defensive coordinator of all time. Like, no, we had D'Onofrio. Like, we know what the worst defensive coordinator of all time looks like. At least he's not messing the kids' bodies up too. But plays at the end of the last game, and Manny was calling plays today. Whatever grade you want to give him, like, he can't be your defensive coordinator moving forward. So, you maybe give him an I for incomplete, but if that's true, I think he's only got a couple more games left here in Miami.
So I'm looking at the chat, and right now the chat's giving them D's. Chat, let us know. What would you grade Blake Baker's job performance so far? Here's my thing, man. And, Blake Baker, I'm not a fan of some of his play calling, but today I'm watching Bubba Bolden miss a wide open tackle that he should easily make on a quarterback. Actually, I saw him whiff a couple tackles. I'm watching Gervin Hall there to make the tackle. He's missing the tackle. I'm watching Al Blaze not properly look back at the ball, knock the ball down. I'm watching DJ Ivy give up a pass. I would understand more if players were out of position, but I'm seeing players in the right position. The players just aren't making plays.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. That's a big part of it because, like, there was those plays you mentioned, and I remember one, like, specifically where Amari Carter, running back was going out to the flat. Carter could have, guy slips him, gets 2 yards past the line of scrimmage. drive continues and kick a field goal. It's like a lot of little things like that add up, which kind of goes in line with like, is that coaching? Is that motivation? What is that? But like you could say it's players, you could say it's coaches. Like ultimately, it needs to get better, right? So if it needs to get better. You got to figure out what you can do with that. And we're getting some good players in next year. Some of these recruits coming in are some high-level defensive talent. So do you want him to be the guy that leads them on for the next couple of years, or do you want to find a different guy? So I think it comes down to that.
List our top corners, like rank our cornerbacks that we have talent-wise so far this season. Like, 1 being this player, 2 being this player, if you were ranking them.
Well, I think I kind of know where this is going, and I think from like impact that he's made on the team, like how good he is in different spots, I think Couch has emerged as our best, probably honestly our best overall secondary player, which I bet like people are going to have a problem with because they know 21's back there. But as the season is progressing on, I feel like Couch is really able to do a lot on that defense. And like, there's even a part of me that's like, you put him at free safety and see what could happen just to keep him on the field at all times. But obviously we can't lose corners, so that's out the window. But I would probably go him first, then Ivy, who, say what you want about him. Kid's physical, kid gets after it. He doesn't give up a lot of big plays. And then probably Blade third, and it's maybe disrespectful to say it about him, but, I don't think poorly. I think they're all playing pretty well. I think the safety play is atrocious, which hurts us and hurts them, but I think they're doing okay. I'm not mad at any of them. I just think Couch is the most standout of the group.
So you said you would, to Corey Couch has made the biggest impact on the defense, and I'm not gonna debate that because I'm a big Corey Couch fan, and I think the way he moves around, he's able to come on blitzes when he's been tested. He's been there. Not saying that the kid won't ever give up any big plays or nothing like that, but he hasn't yet. Today he gets the big interception. He gets sacks. He's really done a lot. But let me ask you this: who's had the bigger impact this season, GB3 or Corey Couch?
Oh, Frierson, for sure.
Okay.
For sure, Frierson.
Easy. It's easy.
I don't factor him like I always consider him as a linebacker. Like I group strikers in with linebackers because I feel like really it's like a Sam linebacker hybrid. So I always put him there. So if I'm looking at the back seven, like I would say he's honestly back seven. He's been our best player for sure. So and he's way far and away better than any other linebacker we have. So that's where I factor him in.
So we're going to get to talking about the offense, but Bubba Bolden, man, he went from us talking about, we were hyping him up. Some people were even telling me he was better than Jaquan Johnson, and I shut that down real quick. But he's looked bad these last couple games. Why do you think that is? I mean, I'm trying to figure out, was there a scheme change? What is going on? I've been saying the stat, he leads the ACC in missed tackles. What's going on with Bubba Bolden and what changed?
I think it's two things. I think, he was a guy who kind of got humbled by the whole situation, having missed so much time. So I think, like, coming into the start of the year, he had a lot to prove. And I think as he started to prove that, he probably started to kind of, like, feel like he was back in the groove of who he was and who he's supposed to be. And, sometimes with that, it's hard to keep that. Like, when you're hungry to prove, like, everybody wrong, it gets a motivator in there that's hard to really match once you've already proved it, right? So that's a tough part of it. And I think also he's really trying to do a lot. Like, he's trying to do so much out. He's trying to make every tackle do this and do that. And I think he's pressing a little bit. And when you don't have guys next to you that can, like, make up for you, it's going to put you in a bad spot, which is why, like, when you mentioned Jaquan, when Jaquan and Redwine were back there, like, they didn't make mistakes as a pair because one always backed up the other, but he doesn't have someone that can back him up. So all the mistakes he's making, like, they're very obvious to us. It deflated the play of the safeties as a whole.
That does make a lot of sense. And I also will say this, when before a player gets any attention, you know, he probably can get away with making a couple mistakes where us as a fan base won't even notice it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, oh, you know, oh, he made a mistake. But once, you know, we start to hype you up, then we start to notice every little thing, right? So any missed tackle gets, you know, hey, that's a big missed tackle, and so on and so on. What about Gervin Hall, man? I mean, Gervin Hall, we all know the story. Nick Saban brought in the helicopter. You know, Gervin Hall wanted to put on the 2-6. And, you know, last year and at the start of this season, I told everybody, listen, when I watch Gervin Hall play, he doesn't do anything wrong, but he doesn't do anything that's just going to make you go, oh my gosh. He's just clock in, clock out. He's going to do his job. But these last couple games, especially today, we've seen missed tackles, we've seen out of position, and we've seen him give up touchdowns. Is Gervin Hall regressing?
I just think that, like, you know, kind of goes back to what Bolden too. I don't think Gervin was ever really that good. Like you said, he was kind of just like, you know, be there, don't make a big mistake guy, which is fine. But like, he's about as mediocre in general as a safety can be, you know. And you mentioned the 2-6 thing, and like, I'm going back, you know, even though obviously the great Sean Taylor, after Sean left, it was like all these dudes that took that number that are like trying to live up to this crazy, like, and they all do the same thing. They all kind of start out hot, you know, get some hype, get some attention. Anthony Reddick did it. Ray did it. Gervin's done it. And they never quite live up to it. And, you know, it's a shame because I think he's got a lot of talent. Like, I understand why Nick brought him, but if he went to Bama, Nick would have been sending him right back in that helicopter because he wouldn't have been playing.
Oh,
it's a shame.
Oh my goodness. So you're looking at this this defense. Go ahead and give out one game ball for the day, man, and tell me why. Give out one game ball defensively, one defensive MVP, and tell me why.
Oh, that's 15. That's Phillips. I think that, like I said, they let him really play his game today. They let him get after the quarterback a little bit, you know. And I see all the mock drafts. I see Roche going, like, some people have him going like top 15 and here and there. Like, if you put those two guys next to each other and you put on a tape and you watch them play a whole game, I cannot imagine how anybody in the NFL would say Roche is better than Phillips. I do not believe it in my soul. And if Roche is getting that hype for top 25 pick, there's no reason why Phillips shouldn't. Because even physically, he's like way more ready to go in and play. He could go play Pro Bowl next year easy with that body type he has. So I think he's just a guy who, you know, he's a pro-looking player, and today he played a game like a first-round pick.
He did, man. I got no argument there. I definitely give my defensive MVP to Jalen Phillips, or you can even make a case for Corey Couch. Who's going to be drafted first, Jalen Phillips or Gregory Rousseau?
Rousseau hasn't fallen off. You know, he hasn't, like, it's still, the hype is there for him. I'm really excited to see how he looks like, because we don't even know how he looks right now. Like I don't know where his weight is. Like, he could be up to 270 or something crazy, right? So I wish I could just kind of get a glimpse of him. Maybe he's just like on the sidelines one day, just to kind of eye him up for a second. But, you know, he's still got that hype right now. So probably Rousseau. But if it were up to me, I would see Phillips go not too far after top 20.
Okay, I feel like we got a weekly check. We got to weekly ask that question. Guys, I got my guy Chris from CANES Legacy. He puts out great content, film reviews on Twitter at CANES Legacy. And then he also is working with CANES Insight mailbags and things like that. Make sure you check my guy out. Let's talk about this offense. Who's the best running back on this offense? Who's our best running back?
Don Chaney is our best running back. Like, I say it without any doubt. Like, he's our best running back. Cam does some things well. Cam's tough. You know, Cam can get some open space. Knighton's got speed. I don't think either of them has the overall package that Chaney does. Like, in my mind, you got to feed him. And, like, I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to make everybody happy. But, like, Knighton doesn't have the mentality, I think, yet to be a great running back at the college level. You know, he's got, like, great traits, but it's Don. Like, Don is the full package, 100%. Like, he's the guy that's going to be, like, the standout for this offense for years to come.
Well, how would you classify Cameron Harris' play as of late? Because Listen, man, and we're gonna get to talking about these wide receivers, but Mike Harley came out and said, we haven't been working hard. We will start working hard. We are working hard. We are working after practice. And then now we see what the wide receivers are doing. Cameron Harris came out and said, y'all disrespected me for 3 straight weeks. And he really isn't running like he feels disrespected. How would you how would you classify his performance as of late?
Well, it's tough because the line hasn't been good. You know, the interior of that line, especially, which is where Cam, you know, probably feels the most comfortable, you know, has been bad, just flat bad. Like all 3 dudes in the interior, like whether you put Traore in there, whether it was Clark in there, they've all been bad. So with that, like it's hard for Cam to really show out the way he is. Like Don's a little bit more patient, got a little bit more explosiveness, I think, in the interior, so which makes him a better fit right now. But if that was clicking, I feel like Hank Harris would have a lot more success because from the beginning of the year, he had these like crazy runs where he would get hit like 1 yard deep, and then he would still break a tackle and get like 8 or 9. But you know, you can only do so many of those before your body starts kind of giving out and you just go down with those hits. So I feel like we can't see the full potential of Cam, which, you know, obviously means he probably isn't going to be the most effective.
Yeah, man. Does Cam seem injured to you? Is that a possibility?
Like maybe he's banged up because he takes a beating when he runs. So like he's just banged up, and I think, you know, it's hard for him to show out when, you know, every game is getting more and more beat up and more beat up, and you know, that's not going to get better.
All right, this Miami offense came alive when they needed to. When they're there, they're there. I do want to say this because I spent the first 3 weeks giving these wide receivers hell. I spent the first probably 4 or 5 weeks talking about these wide receivers, and these last couple games, they've man, they're making plays. And you even look at Pope with the game-winning touchdown today. I saw Mike Harley on one of those tunnel screens or those quick screens that I'm not a fan of, but he blocked the hell out of somebody. D. Wiggins with an amazing catch. Who gets the credit for what these wide receivers are now doing? They are one position that started the season off slow, and they've consistently got better to where they're one of the strong points of this offense.
Well, I think when Harley said what he said, you know, honestly, you know, it blew up because, you know, it sounds like, oh my God, Mike Harley is saying that they weren't working, you know? And like, I think that's more of, you know, Harley doesn't feel like the type of guy to really slack off that badly. I think he was trying to send a message to the whole receiving core, like, hey, we all have to work harder. Like, no matter how hard you're working, it's not hard enough, you know? Like, because there's no, like, plateauing in terms of hard work. Like, when you hit to a certain point, you can't be like, okay, that's good enough. That's about as hard as I need to work. But, you know, that's something where people kind of fall into it, where they think this is what a college football player should work like, and then that's it. I hit my hours for the week. But great players never hit their limit. They push it every opportunity. So whether that came from Harley, whether that came from Likens, whether that came from the players, the other guys, I don't know. But, you know, I think they all deserve credit for actually stepping up. And they're still making mistakes. You know, they're not perfect. I do think that the room needs more general talent. And I think that's coming my way next year with Smith and Brinson especially. But they're definitely doing more than they were doing, which was like a disaster early on in the year, like you said. So I think Likens for sure. There's still things that I watch and I'm like Wiggins especially, like there's plays he makes or doesn't make where I'm like, how could you not? Like, how could you not go get that ball at a high point? You know, how could you drop that pass? It was an easy touchdown. But I think Pope is starting to mature, and I think Harley's becoming a leader. So that's what we needed to see all year.
I want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat who's kicking it with us tonight. I do want to do a quick Q&A. Shout out to my boy David, Elliott, Dr. E247 Canes, Mike Williams, Lenoris, been in here from the jump, Wood Boy, much love to everybody, Hurricane, Andrew, Jory, Randall, Adrian with the super chat. Hey, I appreciate that super chat. Shout out to everybody. William, you were the first one in the chat. Much love. Lenoris has been screaming about the offensive line in the chat, so let's talk about it, man. What's up with our offensive line, man? I see old DJ Skafe getting tossed around like a rag doll from a guy who's smaller, I've never even heard of this kid. Even when I watched the games, I hadn't heard of this kid, and he makes his mark known today versus our offensive line. Talk to us about our offensive line and your thoughts on DJ Skafe.
Well, I really thought Skafe was going to, I thought him moving back on the inside, we bounced the kid around a lot his first 2 years, made him play tackle a lot when I didn't think, that was really his best play, where he was best suited. But really, he's been as disappointing of a player, overall, as anybody on the roster this season. I thought he would be one of our, maybe our second best offensive player, third best offensive player, and he's been one of our worst. And Clark isn't much better on the other side, and Gainer really doesn't have, an elite skill set. I would rather Clark be at center than Gainer, but if you put Clark to center, you just have Trey Orr out there, who's not great. I really don't know what you do with your interior line. I really, honestly, today, when I heard Donaldson was warming up a little bit, before the game, I was like, oh, man, please, please, can we see just Donaldson, just to see what he's got out there. But, he didn't really play. And then Rivers, I wish I could have seen Rivers out there, one of the guard spots, because that kid plays with some heart and some soul. So I was hoping to see him out there a little bit at guard, and maybe he could just take that job for the rest of the year. The interior is bad. I don't think the tackles are bad. I think the tackles do their job well enough, and I think Zion is definitely on a high trajectory, and Williams has been solid all year. But the interior of the line is so awful that King is forced to do a lot of things that he maybe isn't quite comfortable with. And I also think it affects his deep throws because, a shorter quarterback needs time in the pocket to make those deep throws. You can't get people right up in his face. And I think too often when we have those deep shots, he's got a dude right on him, so he's got to, alter that arm angle enough to put it out of bounds.
Guys, real quick, if you could hit that like on the button, it's just going to let more Miami Hurricanes fans know that we are live. Do me a favor. We're at 26 likes. Let's try to get to 50 likes. Hit that like on the stream. Is our offensive line, is that the reason that we can't get the running game going like we want to? To me, I feel like our best run usually comes from a quarterback design run with De'Aaron King. Do you feel like, later on, next year, with more development with Gary Justice, we'll see this O-line prosper? But as of this season, we can kind of chop it up to we have what we have. Do you think that's the reason our running game isn't going as good as that we expected with these three running backs?
Yeah, I do. And I think that, with our run game, which we've only had, and the power spread, it does rely on, outmanning the other guys to an extent, And a lot of what we've had success on was just kind of misdirection in the read stuff, just to kind of catch them off balance, catch them off guard. Well, you can't do that a whole game, especially at the end of a game. The last offensive drive we had a chance to kind of impose our will and, get that first down and nice game out, but we couldn't. It's because our offensive line is so mediocre when it comes to run blocking. And like you said, they were getting manhandled in there. You can't run the ball consistently if your offensive line is getting pushed around, at will by the defensive line. So it kind of boils down to guys just, stepping up and doing their jobs, and they weren't doing that. And I do think in time it'll get better, but I think that's going to come when better players step in. So Rivers, I can't wait to see him in there. It's going to take time, and I don't think even one off season might be enough. But I do think a full off season, if we can get one this year going into next year, will definitely benefit with Justice.
So I feel like we give De'Aaron King a lot of praise, well deserved. To me, and I'm still sticking by it. De'Aaron King for Heisman, give him a call to New York or the Zoom call or whatever you got to, because he's putting up the numbers. Today he adds another comeback in the books. Is there anything that you would like to see De'Aaron King improve on? We understand that what we have in De'Aaron King. De'Aaron King's been playing amazing. But I'm just saying, is there something that maybe you see that he can improve on?
Well, I don't think his deep ball is what it could be. I think when he tries to push it down the sidelines, he has trouble. You know, it may, and at first I thought it was like a timing thing with the receivers because of the lack of like real offseason and the lack of familiarity. But I just think that in the game, it's a lot harder for him to hit that throw, which, you know, is going to be one of the things that the NFL teams probably really look at, that he can't push the ball down the sidelines too well, especially at his height. That'll come into a factor. And I do think he misses some throws that are just kind of like, yeah, you got to hit that one. Like, that's just inconsistent. You got to hit that pass. But he makes those hero throws, like those hero runs that make up for a lot of it. So I do think there's some level aspect of inconsistency. But he is a tremendous football player, which makes up for it. So I would love to see him get invited to the Heisman ceremony. Like, if he's fifth, I think they'll have 5 guys because, you know, they'll send however many, like, they'll have good stories on. So if he's the 5th guy, they might send 5. But, you know, Trask and some of the other guys have a pretty high advantage, I think, over him because of, like, where their teams are and, like, what their stats they put up in more high-profile situations. But we'll see. I would love to see him get an invite just to kind of, like, see how that affects our recruiting going into.
Right, man. I do think, and I see my boy Will Sky, part of the Kane game. What up, Will? Will says, oh my God, Mr. HD, I'm glad you brought that up because I need to talk about that next. But he says Trask got it on lock. I don't think King can win it, but I do think he should be invited. And I mean, you really look at it. I mean, the Heisman, I think the first 2 guys, I think they know who's going to win it. And the next 3, you know, there's storylines. And I think when you look at De'Aaron King, he has a multitude of storylines around him. You know, the adversity he's faced on and off the field. And then also, you know, you can look at Trask, you can look at De'Aaron King, and you know they want to tell the story of how they were in high school together. So I think he gets invited. That's my prediction right now. Let's talk about a couple questionable calls here. And I need to know your reaction to Manny Diaz fake field goal with a fake kicker run with our kicker, toss to our kicker, Jose Borregales, Mr. Automatic, and then a throwback screen to our offensive lineman, to Zion. Please tell me your thoughts on these 2 plays.
Oh, the fake field goal kind of took me off guard because Jose can hit that. That's easy range for him. You know, I would have just ran it, you know, got the 3 points, and then moved on. Like, if anything, like, just you send your offense back out there. Like, I think it was 3 yards away, if I'm not mistaken. But, like, when you have Jose needing to make up 10 yards, when you factor in, like, him going back there for the with the snap and all, like, that's a tough thing for a kicker to make. So that was kind of crazy. But even the 2-point conversion was terrible. I don't know what that play call was. Like, I don't care how many times Zion caught that with his hands and made a beautiful, like, toe tapping in the end zone and all that. I don't care, man. Like, that, I don't care how it works in practice. In a game, that's a big ask for an offensive tackle. And like, as I was watching it, I was saying to myself, man, cut inside. Cut inside, take on the linebacker. He's trying to hit the pylon like he's Mike Harley. And
hey, like he Reggie Bush. He tried to do you remember the scene where Reggie Bush is diving to the pylon while he's out of bounds? My man was trying to be Reggie Bush.
You can't get on Sports Illustrated cover by going back into the field, man. Got to dive at the pylon. Well,
and what's wild is just like somebody in the chat said it. I apologize, but they said he wasn't even eligible. He wasn't even eligible. Yeah. So even if he would have known back inside, it wouldn't have counted.
It was like right. What have you counted?
So when we call plays like that, you know, the 2-point conversion, the fake field goal, and we won this game. But if we don't win this game, Manny Diaz takes a lot of heat. So does he not take heat for making those plays, or, you know, him being the head coach and calling those plays, even though we won?
No, I get, you know, coach trying to make a couple calls to, like, you know, fire up the guys and do all that. But it's like, and yeah, he has got to take heat on it. It's just one of those deals where, you know, if it would have worked, people would have been like, oh man, what a ballsy call, what a great call, you know. So I'm not going to give him too much heat. I just think, like, in general, like try to make sure you maximize your points early in the game, get on the board, make it keep moving forward. The later one, like I know he needed something crazy to happen there with the 2-pointer, but still, maximize your points early, see what you can accomplish, and then worry about chasing them later.
Right. I mean, we throwing it to Zion Nelson. My boy OG Kane says Zion Nelson played tight end in high school. Well, hey, we got 2 pretty good tight ends here. Come on now. All right, so
yeah.
let me ask you this, man. Who do you give your offensive MVP?
Well, real quick on the tight end in high school thing, there's a lot of dudes working at Walmart right now that were tight ends in high school. I'm not throwing a pass to them in a college game either.
Heard that.
Offensive MVP, I'd probably go King. I think ultimately he had a great impact on the game. He was very efficient early on, and later on he made some of the big throws he had to make. And I wouldn't want to pick out one of the receivers because they all made some pretty good plays. So I'd probably go King and just take leadership, keeping him in the game, putting him in a position to score at key moments, and finally finishing it off.
All right, real quick, guys, put your questions in the chat for Chris. Put your questions in the chat for Chris, and we'll get those answered. But yeah, man, I just want to say, because the fan base is saying we need to do this better. We need to do this better, and I think it says something for the players to hear the outside fan base. Mike Harley, Pope, and D Wiggins, and for them to respond. I mean, I think that says something about them mentally. I think it says something about their position coach, Rob Likens. So when we give people, when we talk about players who need to step up, like Al Blaze, DJ Ivy, the back half of our secondary, we also want to give credit when these players respond to adversity. I like it a lot. So let's start with Elliot. Elliot says, are we now a fourth quarter team? That's what it seems like. What do you think about that, man? Do you think we're just this team? A lot of people are comparing it to a couple years back, Mark Richt team, where we ended up playing Wisconsin in the bowl game, where we just won all those close games. Are we just better than these teams, or are we just a fourth quarter team? What are your thoughts on that?
I do think we kind of played down the competition, which is like, if most people who are have been following Miami Hurricanes over the past couple of decades, the deal. We've always played the competition. We just very rarely just go out there and set a tone and blow people out of the water. But at the same time, we do play up on occasion when the situations come in. So I think we do play down the competition. We kind of get down on ourselves early, which is more of like a spirit thing. But I do think the ability to come back in the fourth quarter, especially from 2 scorers on occasion like we have, including last week, I think a lot of that goes to Derek King. I think a lot of that goes to Rhett Lashley, who stays on his dude every second of that game on the sidelines, to give them the confidence they can come back and make plays and still be alive there. And Manny too, his guys don't quit. Even if it seems like they're quitting, and I've seen some people jump on the defense these guys, but I don't think they quit. So I think it goes to Derek King and leadership that's stepping up too, and also Coach Feely too. These guys don't look tired in the fourth quarter. They look physically ready to make plays, and sometimes the other teams do, especially with a weird offseason when it comes to conditioning skills. And I think our guys are usually ready to go out there and play in the fourth quarter just as well as they played all game. So that says a lot for the strength team too.
All right, guys, put your questions in the chat. We got Chris from Canes Legacy on the line. Angel says 12 months ago, I would have killed to be in this position. Miami at 7-1. Why is our fan base so unhappy? I would like to say I'm happy. We 7-1. We won today. I'm happy, but I do think we need to improve. What do you say, Chris?
Well, that's just kind of like the internet fan base mentality, because especially if you're following during a game, if you're watching during a game, and I try to pride myself on someone who can kind of sit back and think rationally about things, but during a game, I'm just as fired up as anybody else. I talk to people who are fired up. Bill, who I run the chat with, he's fired up. It's hard not to be. I think it's just kind of you have to kind of put that where it is, understand that things happen in the course of a game that might be difficult to manage. And, if you get the win, ultimately, that's what everybody's shooting for. Everybody's shooting for W's. That's the stat that counts. So, but I would be happy. And I think this year's kind of that crazy year where, I think back to when I was in school, like a test would come up, I didn't study for it, so I'm just trying to like do my best to get to pass. Like, let me just pass this test, and I'll make up for it next time. Like this season is kind of like just pass it, do well enough to keep the recruits, and then build from there.
All right, and to add to that is, I think there's a narrative, I see it a lot, that people, they make these comments like, oh, well, we're not Clemson, so people are upset. And I'm saying, speaking for myself, no, I'm not upset that we're not Clemson. I realize that we got a long way to go to get to Clemson. Clemson to become Clemson overnight. But I do think I think the talent that we have in our locker room is better than a North Carolina State playing with their backup quarterback, Pittsburgh playing with their backup quarterback, Virginia Tech. I think we do have locker rooms that are better than these guys. So I think that maybe every game we're not going to blow everybody out, but I do think we're playing down to our talent, and I don't get mad at anybody who wants this team to continue to get better throughout the season. But hey, 7-1, I like it. Will Scott says if De'Aaron King leaves at the end of the year, if he leaves, who will be our next quarterback? Do you go with somebody in the locker room, or are you willing to go to the portal?
Well, I think we're going to end up going to the portal because I don't see Coach Perry being the guy. So I would assume we would go to the portal, and then it'd make it a battle between Van Dyke and whoever we pull in from the portal. Like I kind of imagine who we get from the portal will be more of like the De'Aaron King mold, the ability to move a little bit more easily. We can keep a lot of the offense the same. I don't know what last season's future is. I would be stunned if he left after this year, but if he has a really good year next year and Miami has like another step forward in the process, I would assume that he might leave for some sort of greener pastures, like his own head coaching job. So I would assume we want to keep as many things kind of similar as possible and then see where it goes from there. But I would assume it would be a portal transfer and Van Dyke battling it out. And depending on the quality that we get, if King leaves and he gets that fifth spot in the Heisman conversation and all, like we may be able to get a pretty high profile guy. So it'll be very interesting to see what we get.
So this is totally my what do you call it, conspiracy theory mind working. If the NCAA is going to say, hey, this is everybody can come back year, so everybody gets another year, and then they say we're going to grant an extra year of we're going to grant all transfers. If they did something like that, right, I think we should try to get Shane Buechele from SMU. Like, Rhett, you got his number. Call him up. Get him over here to the BK, I mean, he's doing...
Why not, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, why not? He'd be a great fit. And I do think you make a good point about the everyone's getting the extra year, but there was a lot of talk that come January they're going to announce that you could transfer one time without a penalty. Now, I don't know how it's going to work with Shane because he did transfer once before, but I think this would count as his grad transfer, so he should be okay to come right away, so that would work. But you might find some other guys. If there's no penalty, you might find guys that, had success as a young player at a school, and they might say to themselves, hey, greener pastures over there with Laxey. I might only have to do one more year and, be able to make a jump. So you might find some guys that you never thought would leave their current situation looking for a better opportunity, like a kid from UCF, like maybe him, regardless of whether Mackenzie Milton's coming back. Like, there's going to be some guys out there looking for high-profile opportunities that they don't think their P5 team is going to make another run, and we'll see what happens.
Let me ask you this. Brother James says, what is the ultimate goal for this season? What would you consider a successful season?
Before the year, I wouldn't have said, we have to, lose one game in the regular season. I wouldn't have said 10-1 as a goal. I would have said, if we could go 8-3 or 9-2 and look good and lose to Clemson and lose to somebody else in a game where we don't get embarrassed and it's, maybe they're just going to outplay us, but it's a good team. that would have been fine. Right now, like if we were to say lose 2 games in a row, then everyone's gonna be like, the season's a disaster, 2017 all over again and all that. But I don't think that would be true. I think it's all about showing progress, having Manny make good decisions here and there and show that he can lead the team, having the players step forward, guys, and other guys step up in the leadership role. So if we do lose King, we're not terrified about next year. And ultimately, do enough to maintain the recruiting class that I think is going to be one of those kind of linchpins for future success. So just show people we're legit, not Clemson legit, not Bama legit, but, on that next tier of teams that has a chance to jump up in the next 2 or 3.
Okay. And I'm thinking if we can, I want us to end the regular season on some type of a winning streak, and then win a bowl game, because I think, us losing bowl games has been something that's I just hate it, man. I hate us losing bowl games. So I want to get back to where, we're winning these bowl games. And that would be, if we can end the season, we already had 7 wins. If we can end on a winning streak and win a bowl game. I think sometimes it's not the record, it's how you get to that record. And I think, when you look at last year, players, all that stuff, losing to FIU, not putting up barely any points toward the end, it was terrible. I want to give a shout out to Norman. He says, it will take 2.3 years for our Canes to be solid. We need more scholarship players. The 2021 class is solid. We need a couple more to get where we all want to go. And I agree with that. It takes time. I think us seeing what happened with LSU, it kind of puts in our mind that things can happen overnight. But I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, especially with this staff, it's going to be a work in progress. Will Blake Baker be a defensive coordinator for the Miami Hurricanes next year?
No, I don't think so. Like if they took his play calling responsibilities away, that's about as much of a sign that he doesn't have what it takes to be the DC here. Like I don't see him getting that responsibility back this season if he already lost it, and I don't see him being someone that we would trust going into the future. It's not like it's his first year calling plays, It's we're a year and a half in, and if still we don't trust him to do what he needs to be done, then I think Manny has to find somebody else. And I think he could probably poach a pretty good coordinator, it's a relatively high-profile position here at the University of Miami. So, I think he should be able to find someone that's looking for a better opportunity for himself. And, ultimately we should have a pretty good pick amongst possibilities. We got Lashley, he was the crown jewel of the offensive coordinator candidate. So I don't see why we couldn't find the same for defense.
So Blake Baker isn't calling plays anymore?
That's what the word was after the game, and I saw some people that usually tend to be in the know about things saying it. So if that's the case, and I would trust those people that were saying it, then that's about as much of a shot at Baker as you could say.
Shout out to my boy David, longtime subscriber to the channel. Hey David, I appreciate that, man. He says, I'm tired of having elite talent in high school coaching. Now, I don't think we have high school coaching, but I think David's onto something. Miami, although we've been bad record-wise, we have recruited well. Does Miami have the development in this coaching staff to get this team where it needs to be? So when we get a Leonard Taylor, when we get a James Williams, are we going to develop those kids? Because you look at guys like Gervin Hall, he looks worse than he did last year. You look at Zach McLeod, his freshman year, he looked good, and then digress. Same thing with Shaq. And even though I love Shaq, I love me some Shaq. And Pinkney, it seemed like they digressed. Do we have the coaches to develop these players?
I don't know. I think, and I know it takes a lot of heat. I do think Mike Rumpf is a good coach. I do think he gets a lot out of his. What people are like, he's the worst recruiter of all time. Hold on.
Whoa. What does Mike Rumpf do that make him a good coach? I'm just curious.
I mean, look at the history. Like, he's turned a lot of guys who should not have been legitimate players into legit players. Like, he turned Michael Jackson from, like, the 79th best recruit in the state of Alabama, you know, who was totally ignored by every school but, like, Troy, into an NFL draft pick and a very good player for us. Trajan Bandy, who, you know, he had a really good run for us, and he really was not, whether physical ability or size, going to ever be a pro. He became a legit player for us. Like, so he was able to turn some guys that probably shouldn't have been into guys that could actually go out there and play. And I think that, you know, Blades, Ivy, and Couch, like, as far as overall, like, positions, like, how many position groups are better than our cornerbacks right now? Like, not safeties, not linebackers. It's just Gillis, striker.
Whoa. You don't think you think our corners have played better than our safeties? This season?
Sure.
You do?
For sure.
Oh.
We have one safety, and we have one safety. Like, everybody else that's played safety has been bad. No.
So you think so?
You know,
so if you're looking at the position groups of Miami defensively, you say defensive line and then you say corners?
Yeah, I would say defensive line, then corners. And I would say specifically defensive line. I would say our ends have been good. Our defensive tackles have been good. Our ends are probably a little bit better. And then corners would be next after them.
And then you got safeties and then linebackers, or linebackers then safeties?
Oh, the linebackers are atrocious. So I'd have to go with safeties by default. But it's really like Bubba, then the linebackers, then the rest of the safeties, probably, if I had to organize it that way. But yeah, that's how I would go for sure.
Okay, so back to the original question, the development of the players. And to add, go ahead.
So yeah, Rumph, I think, could do it personally. I don't think we have great development at the linebacker position, and I think that goes back to Manny even as a position coach. You know, when he was DC and linebacker coach, he didn't really get those guys moving in a great direction. They're good at rushing the passer and like feeling that aspect out of it, but like being pure linebackers has been tough on him. Like I think he needs in his defense, he needs like players who are instinctive and able to kind of just go out there and take over a game without him having to tell them what to do. Which is why I like some of the guys coming in this class. I feel like there's some really instinctive, natural football players there. But overall, like, you know, there's gonna be guys that just don't have the ability to become a great player. You know, some dudes you recruit are just gonna be kind of like just dudes, just average guys. And like, if those guys go to Clemson, they transfer after their first or second year. You know, a lot of times for us, we need that depth, so those guys stick around. So they find their way onto the field. You know, like people always like bash Robert Knowles. You know, like the idea of Robert Knowles as being this terrible player. People hated him for 3 years, and he kept playing and like ultimately turned into like a solidish player. But you know, that's the kind of guy that you would never see the field at other places, and we just don't have the depth to send him out and get new guys in. So I do think we need just better talent, and then we'll see what we can do once we get that talent. Because once it comes in, then it's just a conveyor belt. Then you put a new guy in if that guy wasn't stepping up.
All right. So we got 247 Canes here. He says, it's hard to recruit cornerbacks at Miami. Name me our last cornerback stub that has been great in the NFL. You want Rump gone? Then name me a feasible replacement. Here's my thing about that. I'm not a big fan of when people that when their go-to is, you know, if you want this coach gone, who are we going to replace him with? Because if you lived your whole life by that motto, then, you know, you're never going to reach where you want to reach in life. I feel like if we're going to stay with Rump, you know, or with any coach, because we don't know who's next, then we're never gonna prosper. If we would have stayed with Enos and said, listen, we're going to stay with Enos because we don't know what other coordinators are out there, what would we look like? But no, we let Enos go after a year, and now we're prospering. So although I feel like you can make the debate, just like Chris talked about the development that he's done with Mike Jack, and, you know, you can make, I understand you defending Rump, but I'm not for the, well, if we let him go, who are we going to hire? well, we would need to do a search and hire a top candidate. You know, that's why they got hiring firms and things like that. You got anything you want to say on that, Chris?
No, I agree with you 100%. You know, and I'll defend Rumpf as a ability to like improve talent and evaluate talent at that aspect. But you know, there's very few people on the staff that we can't improve upon. You know, and winning kind of opens up that door for you. Like in my mind, a cornerback like coach should be able to recruit really well. I feel like it's the kind of position that has that built-in kind of swagger to it, where you know the guy who's coaching those guys should be able to kind of like relate really well and you know go out there and find guys that fit that mold mentally. And I don't think he really has that. And like another part of his question, you said like with the last great corner we've had, like it's weird to say, but like Miami really hasn't had a lot of success with guys going to the league, you know, from the cornerback position. We really haven't had that many like truly great corners, even at the college level. Like probably the worst of any position on the defensive side of the ball, honestly. So historically, which is weird for like where we are located, but we've never really had great corners. Like our best NFL corner is probably Ryan McNeil 30 years ago, you know? So we're still waiting on guys to kind of, we had Rumpf, 2 first-round picks. Neither of them were very good NFL players with him or P-Buck. So, you know, it's just kind of been a position of a lot of, you know, some talent coming in and not that much talent going out.
My guy Dwayne Starks. Don't forget, you know, he was a Baltimore Raven too. You know what I'm saying? My boy Dwayne Starks.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Dwayne had a good run.
So let's talk about it since we're talking about it. Tim Burns decommits, right? Tim Burns decommit. Miami has no cornerbacks as of right now in this next recruiting class. We missed out on Jason Marshall. We missed out on the kids who go to Georgia. One, what did you think about the Tim Burns decommitment situation? And 2, what do you think about Mike Rumpf as a recruiter? Because I mean, don't we need a top recruiter at that cornerback position? Your thoughts?
I do think, like I said, I do think that corner is a spot where you could put like a really good recruiter. Like, I mean, you know, we have Marcus Van Dyke, who is a much better recruiter and kids seem to really relate well to. Like, you could technically slot him in over there and find some other person to come and take his role to focus somewhere else. You know, you could do that. What do you lose in terms of like his ability as a developer of talent? Like, that's the question. I was surprised that Tim Burns decommitted. Like, but if you were going to go down the list and come up with the guys that, like, if 2 kids had to leave the class, who would you pick? And like, I would assume he'd be one of those guys that would be on the list. Nothing against him as a player. Like, he's a pretty good player. But I don't think that, just numbers wise, if you think you'd want him in numbers wise. But at the exact same time, you know, we're critical of these kids who are on the team right now who have not developed into great players. Like, you know, a lot of fans, they'll bash McLeod and they'll bash Jennings. And, you know, I haven't been too optimistic about Amari Carter at times over the past couple of weeks we've done this. So, like, at the exact same time, if you're going to take a kid who's not going to be the player you need him to be, then what are you really doing? Like, better to kind of let him know, like, look, we're going to try to find somebody else better for this spot. So if you want to go now, open it back up, you know, find a better opportunity for yourself. Then there's that. So it kind of is what it is, where you try not to be the bad guy too much by telling a kid, hey, you got to go somewhere else. But if you wait until the day before the National Signing Day, then, you know, you're the worst. then everyone's going to hate you. So, you know, it's a double-edged sword once you start taking those commitments. I think he'll be fine where he goes. I don't know where it's going to be. You know, if we get to the point where, like, we need to ask him to come back, it is what it is. I don't know if he'd do that, but hopefully there's another person in mind they could look for. Or worst case scenario, portal. I get the portal up for somebody younger who's trying to find a better spot for himself and, you know, fill that spot that way.
That's facts. That's facts. I mean, we live in the transfer portal, and you make a good point, man. A lot of people, they say, well, hey, Rumpf hasn't developed these cornerbacks. And then they say, we need Tim Burns. Well, I like Tim Burns. I didn't think we should have dropped him, especially because you look at our numbers. You know, we need to get some corners up. But dang, that's a good point. I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I mean, if if you think that we can't develop players, then we need to get the players who can come in day one. So I mean, I don't know, but hey, right now, Miami 7-1. We definitely got some positions we need at the recruiting, in the recruiting situation. But I think when it's all said and done, Miami goes to the portal and finds some players. That's been our MO. All right, man. Chris, go ahead and let the people know what you got going on Twitter and Canes Insight this week.
Well, tomorrow, keep an eye on our account at Canes Legacy on Twitter. If you don't follow us, go ahead and throw us a follow. We'd always appreciate it. We'll post clips of the game. I think we try to get as many clips as possible. We try to find plays that, you guys probably saw and you noticed and you were like, oh, man, that was a good play, or that was this, that was that. We try to find all those, like, not just the touchdowns, not just, the big plays, like little things that happen here and there that are indicative of something much bigger. We try our best to put those out there too. So, fans can kind of follow along and look at some of the things that happened and like why they happened in the game. So that'll be tomorrow. They'll be like posted all throughout the day. So check us out with that, retweets and all that stuff is always appreciated. But then of course, like our mailbag segment too. So if you follow us when the mailbag comes up, ask us some questions on there too. That's crazy. The question you want to ask, feel free to throw it in there. That's always good. So, and then we'll be active on Twitter and Canes Insight and stuff all throughout the week.
All right, guys, I want to give a shout out to everybody who came to the live stream. Huge shout out to Chris, who comes onto the show after the games and gives us his view from things, man. It's definitely great. Definitely appreciate it, man. I know the chat loves you. And y'all make sure y'all show your love by going, give my boy some retweets at Canes Legacy. Check him out at Canes Insight. All his information will be in the description. Chris, man, I appreciate you.
All right, Grant. Thanks for having me on. It's always a good time, bud.
Hey, yes, sir. Thank you, brother. Hey, big shout out to the chat. Big shout outs to the chat, man. Today we got a lot of super chats. We got a lot of love. And man, that really helps a lot with, what type of content that we're putting out here, man. So I appreciate you. Let me know, guys. I'm thinking about either a morning show, a afternoon show, or a night show. Maybe something daily, but maybe up in the live shows towards the end of the season. Would you rather a morning show, an afternoon show, or a late night show? Which one? Let me know in the chat right now. And I'm just brainstorming things for the channel, and let me know. I'm just brainstorming things for the channel, different ways and more ways that I can the more ways I can put out content. I'm seeing night, I'm seeing afternoon, I'm seeing morning. Afternoon, then night. That man said, Island says you need to do double duty. Jeff says we need to do it at night. That man be working during the day. Yeah, I know I got a lot of people who be out there grinding. Be out here shining. And that's the thing is, there is a lot of Miami Hurricanes content creators. So for instance, if I was wanting to do my show, I don't want to do it at a time where there's 3 other content creators on and people are saying, oh, do I need to go to NMD TV? Oh, do I need to go here? You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of stuff that I want to do is I want it to be interactive with the chat. So y'all go ahead and put it in the comment on the channel and let me know what y'all think. I may do a poll, but just thinking of different ways to do with the live stream. Thinking of different ways to get you guys involved and to put out more content for you guys. 7-1, man, it feels good. Let me see real quick. Shout out to my boy 247 Canes for the super chat. Shout out to my boy David for the super chat. Shout out to Norman for the super chat. Shout out to everybody for the super chats. If I missed one, I apologize. And shout out to everybody for the likes. And special shout out to the Kane gang. I'm out, guys. Y'all have a good night. Peace.